Good afternoon. Good afternoon once again, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm Steve Gregorian, President and CEO of the Detroit Economic Club. Welcome to today's meeting. I'll tell you this, Detroit Lions fever never fades. Look at you rabid Lions fans just waiting on next week's draft. And I love it. So good job for being here. Great job. All right, 92 years of incredible speakers and networking. That tradition continues today. I especially want to welcome our DEC members. If you're not a DEC member yet, give me 10 seconds to convince you your next job, client, prospect, maybe even best friend is right here in this room. If you're not a member, we invite you to invest in you. Join today. You can do so right on our website, econclub.org. If you want to do so today before you leave, stop by registration. We'll give you a free event ticket to be used in the next few months. I would also ask you just to silence your cell phone so we do not disturb today's program. And if you've been with us before, you know we always get started with a pledge and a prayer, so please stand and join me as we honor our country with the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is to my right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. And kindly remain standing as our invocation today will be delivered by our good friend, Father John Phelps, CEO of Life Directions. Father?
On the occasion of the Lions looking at their team and seeing how to make it become great, there's a lot of potential Lions here. Anybody under the age of 21, raise your hand. Take a look at all those future Lions. And as we think about them, we think about the future of our country. And our country is built on character and discipline. And so, Father God, I ask us to pray for the power of a team to teach us in the sports how to have character and discipline, to understand the power of their position, that they can influence the lives of young people to see them as their future. And may this all happen for the sake of our country having strong, powerful citizens who can take charge of their lives and make the future a better place because they've been here. Amen?
Thank you, Father.
You're welcome.
You may all be seated. Thanks, Father. What a great message. Appreciate you. All right, a couple of quick thank yous. Thanks to WJR for being with us. They are doing their focus show live from today's meeting. You can go watch their final 30 minutes after our program. And two people on my team whose handiwork you're going to see up on the screens today, and that's Amy and Matt. Thank you, Amy and Matt. Give them a round of applause. Good job, guys. All right, students are here today and always, courtesy of our generous corporate sponsors. Their morning already began with a private reception with our panelists. I want to take a moment and let you know who's here, but please hold your applause. We've got the Shamrocks from Catholic Central, thanks to Lori and Megan at NBS Commercial Interiors. Riverview Community High School, thank you, Kendra and Accenture. AIM High School, thanks Satish and Aaron from Bank of Ann Arbor. U of D Jesuit Cubs, thanks to Stephanie and Ford Motor Company. And my alumni school, Birmingham CO Maples. Where are you guys at? Way to go, Maples. Good job. Thanks to Visit Detroit, Terry Radigan. Please give them a round of applause and welcome them. A couple things on your tables quickly. Our sponsor brochure. Make no mistake, we could never be here if it wasn't for the generosity, I should say, of those corporate sponsors. Thank you for being a corporate sponsor. If you'd like to get involved, there's some great benefits. Love to talk with you after the program. Also on your table is our season lineup. Next up is April 30th. We'll have a conversation on the economy and the auto industry with PNC Bank and Automotive Research executives. May 8th, if you're a Michigan State Spartan, we'll host their president and AD, Jay Batt, for a conversation on innovation on campus and in athletics. And then looking ahead to June 8th, we're excited to host Senator Slotkin for her first ever visit to the DEC. So I hope you can join us. And finally, we want you to use your smartphone today, and you can be involved in today's program. Take lots of pictures, share on your social media network. Our presiding officer, Terry Radigan, who is the chair of the Detroit Sports Commission, and a DEC board member and a better friend to me, Terry, thank you. He's going to be up here in a minute to tell you how to use your phone for some audience participation fun. All right, let's get this thing started. If you're lucky enough to be in Ford Field on Sundays or Mondays or Thursdays for a Lions home game, you know the intensity, the energy, the excitement level, and the decibel level. So let's bring that energy into this room right here, right now. Watch this video.
What an awesome video. I think they call that a sizzle reel. That certainly was sizzling. Thank you, Steve, and good afternoon, DEC members and guests. Just an incredible day here today. What a time to be a sports fan in Detroit. We've got the Pistons in the playoffs. We've got the Tigers with 5 in a row. And today we get to take time out and just talk about our Detroit Lions. And we're going to have 2 panels today. And we're going to hear from you in the audience as well, as Steve mentioned, because we've got 3 interactive polls during the program, and you'll see a QR code, and you'll be prompted to click on that QR code so that you can answer the questions that get asked. And to start off, our first panel is featuring 2 great guys in our town who both happen to be kind of short-timers in their current role. Brad Galli is the moderator today, and he's the sports director at WXYZ Channel 7 in Detroit. He's completing his final month at Channel 7, and we just can't wait to hear what's next for you, Brad. He's won multiple awards, including Emmys, and just does an amazing job covering every sport in our town, including the Lions. Rod Wood announced in February that he is retiring after serving as the president and CEO of the Detroit Lions for over a decade. And what a decade it was. Along with team owner Sheila Hamp, Rod established a new leadership vision for the Lions, which has reignited the passion in this town for that team. Please give a warm Detroit economic welcome to Rod Wood and Brad Galli.
I don't know about you. I think I'm going to have Terry introduce me every room I walk into. That was very nice.
Do you want to talk about what you're doing next, or?
We could, yeah, sure. Well, I'm not going anywhere, but I don't think people are here to hear from me. They want to hear from you.
Oh, okay.
I want to give a personal shout out, though, to all the students here today. But how about a round of applause for all the high school students here today? Ames, Seaholm, Riverview, Catholic Central, U of D. I used to attend these when I was at Brother Rice. Sam, Brother Rice, let's go. And I still remember how meaningful these were. So we're going to do our best to take our time to go as slowly as we can so you don't have to go back to class today. Retirement is next, but you have a lot of work ahead of that. What's this week going to be like here as we get up to the NFL draft? What are the position coaches telling you guys, the medical staff? How much extra details are being jammed into that draft board?
It's kind of the home stretch. This week we did a lot of work with the medical staff, looking at the different players and the medical issues that you have to be aware of before you pick somebody really high. Call that usually the dream killer meeting, because you fall in love with these players and you find out all these issues that you have to be aware of. Tomorrow we'll do a little planning around mock drafts, trying to figure out who might be taken ahead of us. And then next week it's kind of the work week, where you really try to rest up, because you're going to be staying up till 2-3 in the morning on Thursday night and Friday night. And then Saturday will be an interesting day, because we have 7 picks on Saturday. For now, yeah. I mean, things will probably change, but right now we've got 2 4s, 2 5s, 2 6s, and a 7. So that'll be an intense day. We've had some Saturdays where we didn't have a 4th round pick, and then you sit around for hours watching all these guys come off the board. So it'll be interesting to be a major participant on Saturday. But we're ready. Brad's done a great job. His team's done a great job. A lot of process. I mean, people think of the draft kind of as a spring event, but it really starts, last summer, when they start scouting these guys and reviewing them over and over and over, and really now we're putting the finishing touches on everything.
I know you've been pressed on, hey, when are you leaving? And you just told me at the table, not until you get a replacement. And that's going to take some time, because you guys are very busy right now. But I'm curious, when you're in that draft room and you guys have paid tribute to different people over the years, the '89 black Dan Campbell jerseys that you wore in there, paying tribute to Brad last year after he went and spoke at his school. Do you perceive that there will be a tribute to you inside that room this year?
If it happens, it's not because I'm doing anything, but I don't know. People have said there might be something on Saturday, so I don't know. I do know what we're going to be wearing on Thursday and Friday night. It becomes a big deal. People ask us, well, what are you wearing at the draft? And it's just part of something we started a couple years ago to have something that's fun that goes along with something that's really intense. And I've described the draft as moments of excitement surrounded by hours of boredom, because you're kind of waiting for your turn to pick. And we just kind of made it a thing where we do something that is important for somebody in the room. And this year it might be me. I don't know. We'll see.
Do you want to give us a hint of what you do know that you're wearing earlier in the week?
I do not.
Okay, great. Thanks. Well, that's Rod Wood, everybody. We'll get our next panel up here. The extensions and free agency, and I know they go so hand in hand, because this fan base that's gotten this taste of excellence for the first time in maybe their lifetime, they see contenders making splashes in free agency and swinging big trades, and I don't have to tell you that the desire is there from this fan base, but you guys have built a heck of a core. Can you talk about the balance of trying to build that core and keep that core here, like you have talked about so many times, and the temptations to take those big swings this past winter?
Yeah, everything has to be looked at in totality, not in isolation. And so if you don't make a big trade, or if you don't sign whatever anybody perceives as a splashy free agent, it's not because we didn't think that was the right thing for the team. It's just, it's not the right thing in the context of the guys that we have and the guys that we want to continue to bring back. We've got 4 guys that are up for extensions this year who I imagine everybody in this room would like us to keep: Gibbs, Campbell, Branch, and Laporta. And if we let any one of those guys go and somebody else signed them, it would be the biggest news in the NFL. But when we re-sign them, it's kind of that's kind of boring. You're kind of expected to do that. But anything we do in free agency or trade market is in anticipation that we need to have money available to keep those core players that are part of the team that we've built. And that's on top of already doing Hutch and Panay and Aleem and Goff extension. So all that is kind of how we plan. Now, we didn't make what people perceive as splashy free agent pickups, but they were guys that we targeted. We wanted to enhance the line of scrimmage. We signed a center, we signed a right guard, and we brought in guys via trade. So we've built the team up from where we thought we ended last year, and we added a lot of youth to the team at the same time.
We have experienced through the draft weekend that there's often a break to celebrate one of those extensions. Do you anticipate maybe getting close enough with Gibbs and with Campbell this week, or one of them, to take a break in the action from the draft to celebrate an extension? Or are we close enough to that happening here in the city?
If we were, do you think I'd announce it right now?
Oh, maybe you'd go. Maybe you'd say something like Detroit Economic Club, don't tell anybody, but.
I'll just let that question linger.
Do you want them done before you're moving on into the next phase of your life?
My involvement in that is very minimal, so it's not that important to me personally. But we have a plan to attack all of them. Obviously, with Sam and Brian, they're coming back from injuries, so you want to make sure they're healthy. Jack and Gibbs are first-round players, so we have the option of a fifth-round option year for them. So we're taking all that into account, and we have a plan. And unfortunately, I don't intend to announce it here.
We saw what happened with Kirby Joseph, right? He earned that extension and got it, and then was hindered by that knee and didn't get on the field as much as I know you guys wanted him out there, as much as he wanted him to be out there, and the fan base as well. How much does that play a factor into the deals potentially here with Branch and Laporta? How much is that a conversation to try to maybe get them signed before they come back, or do you want to see them on the field? How do you weigh that decision?
Well, they're all going to be in the building soon. Guys start showing up next week. So once we get a assessment of how they're doing, it doesn't mean they have to play before we would do an extension. We had a similar situation with Hutch a couple years ago with him coming off of his injury, and we were in active discussions with him beginning in training camp, and it took some time because it's a big deal. These may take time because they're big deals, not because of the injury, but we'll look at their health, and that'll be factored into how we approach it. But the plan is now to try and keep all these guys that we've drafted. I mean, you talk about free agency and trades. Every team says they want to draft well, develop their guys, and re-sign them. And we're one of the only teams that's doing that. And generally, we've re-signed guys a little early, which means we got them done and got that behind us, and generally got it at a decent pay scale relative to what it might have been if you waited a year to get it done.
Yeah, look at the St. Brown deal compared to these receivers that are getting the numbers they're getting. Dan Campbell called the owners' meetings this offseason for him has been kind of a rebirth. What did 9-8 do to everybody inside the organization?
Well, clearly, we were all disappointed. No one went into the last season thinking, we were going to miss the playoffs and finish last in the division after winning it 2 years in a row. And I think, and I've said this a couple times, that the benefit of that, I think, is it did focus us to get back to business and get back. Dan's talked to us about this, getting back to our identity, which we felt like we lost a little bit last year as being this, tough, gritty, hard-nosed team. And if we'd gone 11-6 and made the playoffs, maybe you wouldn't have looked at some of the stuff as closely as we did. So we're not going backwards. I know that. We're going forwards, and we expect to be right back in the playoffs, fighting to win the division next year, and hopefully have another home playoff game at Ford Field and see what happens after that. As we were just watching that sizzle reel, the great Will Birchfield over here said to me, he goes, you should ask him about just the home field advantage. And so I will. Will and I got to stand next to each other in the closing moments of that game against Tampa in the playoffs, and I don't even think we could hear each other think, breathe. I don't even hear ourselves think and breathe. I mean, what you all have turned Ford Field into, not just in the city but across football, as you leave, but even as you watch this team as a fan, how proud are you of what you have turned Ford Field into in the NFL? Well, I'm proud a little bit. I think it's mostly the fans, and I think they're the ones that deserve the credit. We built a team, I think, that this city can be proud about, excited about. The coach is, Dan Campbell's everything that Detroit's about. I think all that played into it, and then the fact that we had success after a while, of not having success. I think people got really excited, and it became something you didn't want to miss. And when you don't want to miss something, and then you get to experience, that Rams game and then the Tampa game, you want to be back for the next one too. And it's not just home field advantage. We've got it on the road too. Yeah, you do. We'll take, 20, 30,000 Lions fans at most of the road games, including Green Bay, which, that never happened. So our fans show up at home, they show up on the road, and they're the ones that deserve all the credit for the home field advantage. I'm sure they'll show up in Germany. And you described a little bit in your interview with Dave in the Free Press just a couple weeks ago here that you don't know for sure the team you're going to play, but you did get to talk with the league about teams you don't want to play there because you want to keep those as home games. For this crowd, could you walk us through that process? Yeah, so if you are chosen to play internationally, you used to be able to eliminate all your division opponents, so you would have to play a division opponent on international game. They changed that rule a couple years ago, given how many international games we're playing now. If you start eliminating that many teams, it makes it difficult to schedule. So we get to eliminate 2 teams. So we will not play Green Bay for sure, and we will not play Minnesota for sure in Germany. I would be surprised if we play the Bears, but that is a possibility. I know there's a couple of teams that are campaigning to be our opponent over there who also has interest in marketing in Germany. So I would suspect it might be one of those 2 teams that I know are anxious to play us over there, and it would not be a division opponent, but it's possible to be the Bears. To go over there, I know it's been a while since the Lions have been over in Germany, but just to get that taste, I think will be so unique for so many guys. I know Amon-Ra St. Brown's looking forward to it. You also said that you're not going to be wearing the new Nike rivalry jersey over there. But for this crowd, maybe that isn't familiar with that program, I know 2 divisions got them last year. They're a little bit different than the jerseys now. Can you, again, maybe just walk us through that process of what it's been like with Nike developing a new rivalry alternate jersey? Yeah, we're the second year of the rivalry uniform. So if you watched last year, 2 divisions wore them. You get to wear them once at a home game against one of your division opponents. And so once the schedule comes out in May and we know, who we're playing at what games and prime time versus, Sunday afternoon, we'll sit down and figure out the best time to unveil them. I'm pretty excited about them. They're kind of consistent with our colors and our look, but I think with a little modern twist that the fans are going to like. And that was a process that we went through over several years with Nike, and telling them what we'd be interested in. They come back with a version, we push back, and it goes back and forth, and we finally settled on one that I think everybody's going to like. The Thanksgiving Day game, I know, has been protected and now celebrated, and the ratings are through the roof, and so I think that's not necessarily in danger. But to see that for a while, be a point of contention for different fan bases, and when this franchise wasn't, hitting at the speed it's hitting at now, to see what it is now. Again, another pride point for you, I'm sure.
how fondly will you look at these Thanksgiving dates in your role, and will you continue to look at it as you move on?
Yeah, it's uniquely, I think, Detroit. We have the parade, we have the game. It's the only game on. It kind of kicks off the holiday season for the whole country. There was, a push a few years ago to try to take it away from us and take it away from Dallas and move it around, but that never got real serious legs. I think now it would never be considered to be taken away from us. I think the last 2 years has been the second highest rated regular season game, behind only the Dallas game that follows us in a little better time slot. Very happy with the entertainment aspects of it the last couple of years, and last year having Jack White and Eminem kind of blew the roof off. It'd be a tough act to follow for this year, but we're already working on some ideas. So it's just a great, and it's a different crowd than a lot of our games. It's very family focused. Kicks off earlier in the day, so it's a unbelievable Detroit tradition. And I've talked to other teams who would be scared to death to have a game on Thanksgiving, fearing that no one would show up. Because you think if it's not part of your DNA and you had a game in, pick the city, Tennessee, Nashville, would anybody show up on Thanksgiving? We're here, it's precious to us, and our fans show up, and I'm very confident that we're going to keep it forever.
I know your boots are still very much on the ground, and you're still working to make everything right as you continue to thrive in your role. But with about a minute left in our conversation here before we have our discussion about the draft, what will you look back at with the biggest smile? What will make your heart pound the most as you look back at your tenure as president of the Lions?
Yeah, I've been asked that a few times. I would say I'll answer it a couple of ways. I think the decision to hire Dan and Brad, really changed the trajectory of the team. We took some criticism at the time. They were not as well-known commodities, obviously, then as they are now. Dan's press conference kind of set a tone for, who he is, and also, led to a lot of criticism about, him not being ready for prime time. So I'm very happy that I leave that behind. And the thing I'll never forget was that Rams playoff game. And 3 hours before kickoff, the place was packed, and Stafford runs on the field, and 50,000 people are chanting Jared Goff, which was a moment that it's kind of continued. I mean, people do it all over town now. So, and the way that game ended with us getting the first down to clinch it, it was a night that I'll never forget.
A lot of memories made, a lot of memories to come, and your hands have been all over it, your mind's been all over it. Rod Wood, everybody, president of the Detroit Lions. Thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Brad.
Thanks for talking.
Thank you very much, Rod. Good luck at the draft. Okay, we're ready for our next panel. Excited about this. So we've got, let's see, Dave Burkett, first of all, is the Lions beat writer for the Detroit Free Press. He's covered the Lions for many years, and his articles and his books and his insights are really a must-read for any Detroit Lions fan. Nick Baumgardner is the senior writer and NFL draft analyst for The Athletic. If you don't know, that's the New York Times version of their sportscast. If you are a Lions fan or an NFL fan, you really need to follow Nick's work. And then Will Birchfield is a sports writer, 97.1 The Ticket, and we enjoy watching him on Fox 2's Lions pregame coverage and on Sportsworks on Sunday night. And if you haven't seen his Miller Lite Minute, you got to check that out as well. Let's give a warm Detroit Economic Club welcome to Dave, Nick, and Will.
Dave, do you want to start with a special shout out to anybody in the room today?
Yeah, my wife is here. I don't even know where she's at. She surprised me.
Oh, she's right up
Said
close.
she was supposed to bring my daughter. The high school function that we have beforehand, she was going to surprise me with my daughter too, but she couldn't get out of school today.
So if you hear any booing when Dave talks, now you
that's
know where it's
probably
coming from. She did say she came for Will. Who wouldn't?
She lies.
Yeah. Listen, we all love this team. We love following this team, and these three guys are some of the best sources to get you ready for the draft. And so the last few years that we have done this, we walk away, and I think the biggest satisfaction we can get out of this is that you feel like you can walk into a room with your friends and family and go, I'm ready to talk about the draft. I got some ideas of who they should pick. And these guys are here to ready to fuel your mind with draft information. So we're going to start with the offseason that has been for the Lions, and we're going to start with the free agency. And again, you just heard from Rod, the splashes that every team hopes, every team's fan base hopes to see made, maybe weren't made in the way that the Ravens made this offseason or some of the trades that were swung by some of the organizations, but this team shored up maybe its biggest weakness last year, and that was the O-line in going out and getting Cade Mays, the center.
I thought the biggest question they had to answer this offseason was who's playing center for this team in 2026. And look, they were probably never a realistic landing spot for Linderbaum, who signed for about $300 billion with the Raiders. But Cade Mays feels like a pretty good solution to what was a pretty obvious problem last year. And look, Graham Glasgow was a good soldier for this team, but he was never cut out to fill Frank Ragnow's shoes. And frankly, Frank Ragnow left the team in a pretty difficult circumstance when he retired as late as he did. And this offensive line was built from the inside out around Frank Ragnow, and the interior pressure that they were allowing for most of last season led to a lot of 3-and-outs, a lot of stalled drives. We weren't used to seeing that. When Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes talked about losing part of their identity last season, to me it was tied to the decline of the offensive line. And they made it a priority, as Brad Holmes told us about a month ago, to rebuild that into a strength. That is inextricably tied to the way they want to play football. They want to be violent. They want to be downhill. They want to be rugged. And Cade Mays will help them get back to that. He's a young player who's really only played center for about a season and a half in the NFL, which the Lions see as a real positive. They see a stable floor now with Cade Mays and a pretty high ceiling. So to me, that was a pretty pivotal move and a pretty smart move at a cost that looks pretty good compared to what Linderbaum and others got on the free agent market.
You always like the free agents you get, and you're going to say it whether or not you firmly believe it or not, Dave, but Dan Campbell told you guys at the owners' meetings they thought he was right there with Linderbaum as the two of the top centers in the market, and that wasn't the only move they made on the offensive line. Bringing in a brother Rice guy and Larry Borum on the right side of the O-line there as a tackle. What do you see Borum as? Is it going to be a spot starter? Is it a guy that they're going to lock in there and draft, or do you see him as more of a new Dan Skipper?
I think it really depends on what happens in the draft that we're going to talk about here coming up. I mean, they are targeting him as their starting right tackle for now. Penei Sewell would move to the left side. He's been All-Pro, 3-time first-team All-Pro, so that's a big move for him. But if they land a starting caliber right tackle in the draft, it's possible that Larry Borum does become the Dan Skipper in the backup. Look, I think Will is right that the Lions addressed their biggest need at center. Certainly that was a huge issue for them last year, but I look at the offensive line as a little bit of a shell game in what they did. I mean, they've opened up a hole at left tackle by cutting Taylor Decker. They still have a question mark at left guard, though they have better depth there. So the offensive line is the engine that runs this team, but they still have some pretty big questions that they have to answer here in the draft and the rest of the spring.
Nick, before we get to the edge question in the defensive end and somebody opposite Aiden, I just wanted to get your perspective on what they've done on the offensive line since Frank Ragnow retired.
Yeah, I mean, like Will said, they were put in a really difficult situation. I think it was just circumstance. Frank, his body fell apart. We can't decide when our bodies fall apart, unfortunately, and his did. So it was just one of those things they had to just deal with it. And I agree too. Like Graham Glasgow he's like one of my favorite Lions, as hard as that guy goes. But like he wasn't that guy. So they were limited with their calls last year. I actually thought the stuff that they have done this offseason was among the smartest and most patient moves we have seen of anybody in the NFL this year. I thought the Lions had one of the better off seasons. If you also include the fact that Dan Campbell addressed his coaching staff the way that it needed to be done, they also addressed, I believe, the training staff at some point throughout this whole thing. So they really did pull the hood back. And so far, we'll see about the draft, but so far I feel like they've done a nice job. Everybody
here loves when Aiden Hutchinson has those 3-sack games, but I think over the last few years since he's arrived here and really arrived as a premier pass rusher and just edge presence, Nick, everyone keeps asking, who's on the other side? And the answer we've gotten from Brad Holmes over the years is it's an expensive position to pay, and to pay two of them really puts you in a bind. They went out and swung a one-year deal to get DJ Wanham in here. What kind of solution is he on the opposite side of Aiden Hutchinson?
So I think it's a partial solution, and I think this is the strategy that Holmes is going to have for a while here, is that Wanham is a younger, healthier version of Marcus Davenport that we saw last year. So he's a big, edge that can play first and second down opposite Aiden, who's on the field for every snap, obviously. What else you need on that, though, is a guy who can come off the bench and play maybe second and third down and pass rush. So you can have kind of a young pass rusher and an older edge setter, and in that twosome, you have your edge opposite of Aiden. And you don't have to pay them anything. And that's the thing. Like Holmes has said this several times. They believe Aiden Hutchinson is what? No worse than the second or third best edge in the league. And when you have that, there's no reason to overexert yourself on the other side because he is literally that good. They could put a replacement level, they did it last year, a replacement level edge on the other side, and that guy's going to get 9 sacks because Aiden will create 9 sacks for him. So it's about staying cheap, I think, in some cases, and staying young and just kind of addressing it as it goes. I think they've handled that smartly as well. I would not have, maybe like a Max Crosby or something, but like otherwise I wouldn't have spent big money, no.
All right, we're going to move through 2 people here before we get up to the draft needs. Give me like 30 seconds here, Dave. David Montgomery, I still have people asking me, how in the world did they let him go? What happened there? He's moved on to a different opportunity with Houston. They go for Isaiah Pacheco. Break down what's going on in the running back room there.
He wanted to leave. I mean, that's point blank the bottom line. Was David Montgomery was unhappy with his role. He felt like he was a starting caliber player. He never voiced it in terms of the media. He didn't say it publicly. He wasn't an issue in the locker room, but he wanted to play more minutes. And the Lions did what was right, both by him and for them, because with some of the financial constraints that they're under, to pay a running back $6 million that David Montgomery was going to make, it made more sense to sign Isaiah Pacheco for just over the league minimum. He's a power back. He can give you similar production on fewer carries, and they're going to roll with Jahmyr Gibbs, which is the right thing to do for them at running back.
Isaac Tesla, they drafted him last year. He'll emerge. He's going to get more touches. He's going to get more targets this year. Khalif Raymond has moved on. He went to Chicago, and I think that was the decision the Lions wanted to do, as we heard so much from Dan and Brad. They're trying to get younger. They go out and get Greg Dortch as their new return man and wide receiver. Where do you see him fitting in?
Well, he's going to be their Khalif Raymond, and it doesn't mean he's going to get a ton of touches on offense because he's wide receiver 4 in an offense that, as you just said, has Tesla, J-Mo, and Amon-Ra St. Brown. But he's a younger version of Raymond. I thought last year with the Cardinals he really popped for the first time as a returner, and I think for the first time last year we saw Raymond beginning to show some of his age as a returner. He had a career low last year in punt returns when it comes to yards that he averaged, and Dortch had a career high. I think the Lions view what they paid Dortch versus what the Bears paid Raymond as a smart, shrewd move. They might get more out of Dortch for a lesser cost, and they got to feel pretty good about that. And the Tesla conversation is going to continue to be fascinating because the Lions spent 3 third-round picks on a player who is going to be playing behind 2 of the best receivers in football for the foreseeable future. So it's going to be on Drew Petzing to find ways, the new offensive coordinator, to maximize their investment in Tesla, which is probably as simple as throwing to him every single time in the red zone because he had, 10 catches for 6 touchdowns last year. So let him go up and get it. It's not something the Lions offense has necessarily been known for or shown a proclivity for, is those 50-50 jump balls, but Tesla is definitely someone who can prove his value in that regard.
We've opened up the poll here. Thank you for your participation. Pick up to 2. What are the Detroit Lions draft needs? Offensive line and defensive line. It's crazy to think that the offensive line was the strength for this team about 18 months ago. And with Frank going down and now Taylor Decker leaving, it has opened up, as Dave said, the opportunity. I mean, all 3 of these guys have said, the opportunity to add new anchors to this O-line. So as we see what everyone in the crowd is saying here, guys, it's our designation to react to the audience poll. I think we almost kind of stirred the conversation here. Nick, let's go back over to you. Secondary, too. I mean, Terry Arnold is in a situation Brad Holmes told us this week they're aware of. They have no comment. Is secondary something perhaps they look at in the draft early?
Yeah, Look, Dave and I were talking earlier, and Will, I think, said something about it too. Tennessee's corner, Jamad McCoy, is like a ridiculous athlete. That's exactly what Brad Holmes is all about for corners. There's going to be a bunch of guys in the first round that he's going to have a really hard time saying no to that are not tackles and that are not guards. Like, I have told people quite a few, I don't know what they're going to do, but I wouldn't be upset if I were you if they don't take an offensive lineman high. If they say, if a corner is there that he's like, I got to have this guy. This is what we're doing. He's going to do it. Or if it's a safety, or if it's a tight end even, right? Like, I don't know where it's going to go, but obviously offensive line is your number one concern. But like, all you have needs, sneaky needs, and like you do need more tight ends. you do need some more stuff at safety. You do need probably some more corners. So I don't think it's a slam the door shut case that it's going to be offensive line in the first round, because there could be some other guys that are pretty talented.
I see some Jared Goff haters out there too. 6% of quarterback being the biggest need. That would be my son voting right now, because whenever we talk in the car, he's like, they need a quarterback. But I just wanted to say two things, right? Like, I think the Lions need a defensive end, okay? And I know they filled the spot with DJ Wanham, and they can say what they want about some of the financial constraints that they're under. It's all true, but that doesn't mean you can't go out and spend on someone, or you can't add another pass rusher. So I think that's a spot that they need. Certainly offensive line, because it has been such a big strength for this team over the years. I would probably rank that number one if I was doing my needs. You need a starting caliber right tackle. You need another defensive end. Some of these other positions, Brad is going to take the best player available, and cornerback is one that certainly could be in the mix.
Draft night is going to be fascinating, because Brad Holmes and the Lions are committed to best player available. And we're going to find out exactly what they think about most of the top edge rushers and most of the top offensive tackles in this draft, because they'll probably have their choice of offensive tackle after Maui Noah and Fano, and they'll probably have their choice of edge rusher after Bailey, Reese, and who's the and Bain. And so if those guys are on the board when it comes to Monroe Freeling, when it comes to Blake Miller, when it comes to Caden Proctor, and then on the edge conversation, TJ Parker, Keldrick Falk, Zion Young, and others, but Dylan Thieneman is on the board, Jermod McCoy is on the board, even Kenyon Sadiq is on the board, or Vanga Ione is on the board. Brad's going to have to think long and hard about drafting a player who might not fill a dramatic position of need. The other thing we might learn on draft night is exactly what the Lions believe about Kirby Joseph's long-term outlook, and potentially what they believe about Terrion Arnold's ability to be cornerback one. If they go early on a safety, they probably don't feel great about Kirby beyond this season. If they go early on a corner, it probably tells you they don't fully believe in TA being a cornerback one, and you do need a shutdown cornerback in today's NFL.
I don't mean to hijack the stage for me, Brad. I'm sure you get questions.
Start booing.
But the reality is that Terrion Arnold has some potential legal issues that are in the mix as well, and people don't want to talk about that. But that's the reality of it. And you're seeing some of these highlights up here. I guess Steve texted us a couple of weeks.
I was going to say, do you want to go with your two? So this is what we're going to try to simplify it. We just threw a lot of names out at you, and it might smell like white noise and sound like it as well. I don't know why white noise smells. It sounds like white noise.
Smells coming from you sitting next to you,
buddy. Or the teachers from the Peanuts. Wah, 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 wah. Yeah. We're giving you visual proof of the reasons why these guys picked them. So 2 players from each of these guys who the Lions could potentially pick in the first round. Dave, give us your pair.
Well, I don't remember who the second one was, but I was going to tell the story. Steve texted us in advance, a couple weeks ahead of this.
Those are your 2 right there.
There's my 2.
I got
you,
man.
Monroe Freeling and Jermod McCoy. Those were the two names that I gave him. And Jermod McCoy, I think that's a name that's come up here in the last 24 hours. If you were listening to Talk Radio today, I wrote a little something. Daniel Jeremiah had mentioned his name on a teleconference the other day. But the reality is like Nick said and Will said, Brad is going to take the best player available. Jermod McCoy was a top 10 type talent coming into the season. He missed the year because of an ACL injury. Can make all your jokes you want about Brad targeting injured players, but this is the type of talent that if he falls to the Lions at 17, that he might be all over. And it's a risky pick, not just because of the injury, but also you go back and you look at way too early mock drafts from a year ago. Half those guys aren't even first-round picks anymore. So talent changes, players grow and develop or regress. You don't know exactly what he's going to be, but he could fill a big need for them. And then Monroe Freeling, look, he's one of the most high upside tackles in the draft. And if the Lions are looking for someone who could potentially play this year, but certainly be a fixture for them in the future, he would be a guy that you could let Larry Borum play right tackle to start the season, and then you could put Monroe Freeling in the mix whenever he's ready.
Nick, you're looking at Clemson's O-line and Missouri's defensive line. Walk us through your 2 picks, please.
So I think my picks were Maxine Hanker and from Arizona State.
Oh, I went to Will. My bad, man.
Go
you're right.
You're on the screen.
All right, good.
So we're seeing some Zion Young highlights here, and Michigan State fans might remember him from a couple years ago. He eventually transferred to Missouri, and he really took off there. But I agree with Dave. The Lions need another edge rusher to complement Aiden Hutchinson. And the way that the Texans built the best duo in the league was paying big money to a free agent in Daniil Hunter and then drafting Will Anderson in the first round. Obviously, they got him second or third overall, which is different than 17th. I actually think 17 for Zion Young might be a little bit lofty, but if the Lions feel like they can trade back and still fill the edge need later in the first round, I think he's a player to watch. Like he is power, and he's probably already ready to play in the NFL against the run. I do want to say, just in favor of the cornerback idea, I'm sure there's a lot of resistance to that because we're 2 years removed from them double dipping at corner with TA and Ennis Rakestraw. We're a year removed from them signing DJ Reed to a 3-year, $48 million deal. It shouldn't feel like they need a corner, but they very much might. And you do need, to me, elite cornerback play in today's NFL. If you look at the top 6 scoring defenses from last season, all of them had a true dynamic difference maker at cornerback. You can go right down the list. Devin Witherspoon for Seattle, Patrick Surtain for Denver, Gonzalez for New England, Stingley Jr. for Houston, Quinyon Mitchell for Philly, Trent McDuffie for Kansas City. And the common thread there is all of those guys were first-round picks. And 3 of the 4 teams that played last year on Conference Championship weekend are on that list. And the only one that's the outlier, the Rams, turned around this offseason and did what? Traded for Trent McDuffie. And so obviously, you need a great front. You need pass rushers. But in a league that is ruled by quarterbacks and star receivers, you need cornerbacks that can at least minimize the damage that opposing receivers do. And it might be, if McCoy slides, the right time for the Lions to reinvest at that position.
You sold me on the pick if he's there.
And even look inside the division, right, with Justin Jefferson in Minnesota, and how do you try to guard a guy like that? Chicago's only getting better with more weapons around Caleb Williams. And with what Green Bay is doing with Jordan Love, paying him big money, they're going to continue to put people around him. Nick, your 2 guys, potentially first-round targets for the Lions. Go.
So Max Ian Hanker was the tackle from Arizona State there that was up a minute ago. He is one of the most unique guys in the class. He's only played football for 5 years. He did not play a single snap of high school football. He's from Nigeria, moved to Los Angeles when I think he was like 13. Eventually, he plays basketball in high school. He was like 6'6", 300 pounds as a basketball player. So he's a terrific athlete who's naturally taken to offensive line play as a natural pass blocker, as you would assume, with really quick feet. His favorite player is Penei Sewell, and if you really squint, look deep, you can kind of see a little bit of Penei, like a Penei Jr. a little bit. So I think he's great, but he might not be ready. So he might be another guy like Freeling where he'd have to step behind Larry Borum for a minute, but the Lions are in a good spot to do something like that. The other guy I gave was an edge, Akeem Mesidor from Miami, who was Ruben Bain's kind of cohort there, and I'm not going to swear up here, but the word we use for people like Mesidor is in the scouting world is an SH kicker, right? And you can fill in the blank. He just drives through people right through their face, right, and is one of the most physical and most violent defenders in this class. And if there's anything that screams Lion, it's that. He's also older, which I don't hate for them because if I'm taking an edge, I want a guy who can come in and immediately help. I don't even care if I have to pay him after his rookie deal. I want it right now. So that's one that I would consider.
And like McCoy, he has some injury questions,
yes.
So maybe he's right up Lions' alley.
Yeah, Brad might.
We got to stay on time. Our discussion continues, but Amy, you want to throw the slide up there with the poll? You guys want to slide that in here so we can get the crowd interacting? You've heard them sell this a little bit. We'll have them go through the names. So start at the top, and if it was your guy, go through and give them a 10-second spiel again on why they should pick him.
Yeah, so again, Zion Young, he might not have extreme pass rushing upside, but he would fit the profile the Lions typically value at defensive end, which is longer, which is probably more rugged against the run. Interestingly, he's been compared to Zadarius Smith with the length that he plays with some of the meanness, the nastiness that he plays with. But I'll be honest, I think Monroe Freeling makes a ton of sense for the Lions. And as I've thought more and more about this, I'm not sure that he'll be there at 17. I don't know if he makes it past, say, the Rams at 13. But to play under Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes on this Lions team, there are 3 non-negotiables. You have to be extremely tough. You have to be there for your teammates at all costs, and you have to love the game of football like it infects you. And I think one story about Monroe Freeling kind of captures all of those three things. So this past season, they're playing Kentucky early in the season. He suffers a pretty severe high ankle sprain, knocks him out of the game, was supposed to sideline him for 3 to 4 weeks. Well, they were playing Auburn that next week, and he was like, I can't possibly miss the Auburn game. So he spent the entire week walking around in a boot, wearing a game-ready sleeve when he slept, and he caught wind during the week, overheard a conversation between coaches that they might not travel him to Auburn. So he texted one of the coaches and was like, you have to travel me. Even if I'm just there on the sidelines, I need to be there to mentor the backup offensive tackles who will play in my place. You have to bring me. So they bring him, and on game day, the offensive line coach asks him, hey, in case of emergency, like, could we use you today? And he was pleading, like, coach, yes, please, if you need me, put me in. Georgia goes nowhere on its first 2 drives. They're down 10-0 on the road to Auburn. Well, they break glass in case of emergency, and they put in Monroe Freeling, who played 65 snaps, who spent most of that night blocking Keldrick Falk, who's a likely first-round pick, did not allow a single QB pressure, and Georgia rallies for a 20-10 win. And I just imagine Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes hearing that story, asking him about that story, and saying, like, that is our guy. And he might not be an immediate 2026 starter, but by 2027, as we were saying before, guys, like, Monroe Freeling could be a stable, high-ceiling player who's your left tackle or right tackle for the next 7-8 years.
Can you tell that everybody in Will's high school copied his homework when they were growing up? Dave, go ahead, man.
Oh, do I have 10 seconds too? Or
You
what?
have 10 seconds as well.
No, I'll just say this. For my first couple mock drafts, I gave the Lions an offensive lineman. I think I went Blake Miller from Clemson first, Monroe Freeling in my second one. I was convinced I was not going to give them anything but an offensive tackle in my mock drafts. I'm giving them a defensive end in the mock draft that I don't know when it'll run, today, tomorrow, this weekend. Keldrick Falk from Auburn, who's not on that list. Just because when I came away from the owners' meetings a couple of weeks ago, talking to Rod and talking to Dan, they left me with the impression, they did not say this directly, but they left me with the distinct impression that they feel like defensive end was a bigger need for them than offensive tackle. And the only way they're going to get that guy, because they will not spend in free agency on it, is to draft that guy. I don't know if that's in round 1. I don't know if that's in round 2. I do think they will take a pass rusher. So I certainly think those offensive linemen are still in the mix. A pass rusher like Keldrick Falk, his size, his youth, his upside, his ability to play inside. And then, again, I wouldn't rule out a player like McCoy, who has immense talent, who may be there at 17 because of the injury concerns.
Nick, can we go to the local talent that's playing on the board here? Some of the Michigan guys, especially on the D-line, I know caught your eye.
Yeah, Derek Moore is a top 50 player. I think Rayshon Benny, the defensive tackle there from Detroit, also is probably a top 120 guy. I think he could also go on day 2. You've got Zavada, the kicker. Marlon Klein, the tight end, I think is a guy that might be a sneaky. Yeah, he's 6'6", 250. I think the Lions actually could like him as a TE2 later. And then Michigan State's got Velling, the tight end there, and a center as well. I believe the center might be the guy that transferred from Wake Forest, Colbin, I can't remember his name.
Pretty good punter, too.
Yeah, and then good punter. Michigan State always seems to have good punter. There's Tucker from, I believe, is it Central or Western? Western, yeah.
Will wanted to touch on him.
A few guys there, yeah.
Will's very brief in his thoughts. Do you want to jump in here?
One more guy I would mention that's not on here for the Lions that we didn't have on the list is Venga Ioane, the guard. If he is there at 17, you put him in between Panay and Mays. You worry about tackle later.
Say the name again.
Venga Ioane.
Venga Ioane, yeah.
Penn State.
All right.
The big boy. Looks like
Tucker's a great story. I mean, he didn't begin playing
Western?
football. Yeah, out of Western. Didn't begin playing football until senior year of high school. He was destined, or he was set on becoming a cop. And then some of his teammates convinced him to give football a try. He goes to JUCO route, ends up at Houston. Didn't play much there for 3 seasons, but last year leads the country in sacks with 14.5, tied with David Bailey, who's probably going to go 3rd or 4th overall and leads the country in tackles for loss. And another guy, I think, whose story and drive and will would appeal to the Lions. I mean, you have that kind of pass rush upside, you are worth taking a swing on, late on day 3.
Any Maction love in here? We got any Western Michigan, Central Michigan, Eastern, Miami? Raise your hands. We're a little action.
Hey, let's go.
That was specifically for you, Brett. Absolutely. Yeah, I know, man. Any more of the local talent, Nick? We'll go back to you real quick. Just that you think could be a name to watch that people could celebrate around here.
There's a couple guys actually for the Lions, the Michigan guys. They had in for 30 visits. I think Jimmy Rolder, the linebacker, right? They had him in.
Big game against Michigan State.
And they had McCauley in, the receiver that was just on there making the catch along the sideline. Rolder is interesting. He didn't play a lot. Also, Jayshawn Barham, the other kid from Michigan, he's a top 100 guy probably as well. Rolder didn't play a lot until they moved Barham down to edge. But Rolder could be a linebacker. I wonder if the Lions are interested in later. And then they brought McCauley in, so I mean, I wonder if they're looking at him for something later too.
I'll throw you one more name too. He's not Michigan or Michigan State, but a Detroit kid, Caleb Banks from Florida. He had a foot injury last year. Only played a couple games. Probably would have been a first-round pick. Could have been a first-round pick had he stayed healthy. Probably goes in the second round now. He re-aggravated that injury, but he's a pretty impressive prospect who also came on a local visit to the Lions.
We love seeing the local guys make names for themselves, and it's fun even when they do things against the Lions. Just, in the event of a Lions win. Oh, that was cool. It's a nice secondary story to write. Do we want to go into the next discussion here? I think we kind of said maybe if we got through the local guys, we could talk about the division as a whole, because we know this is a 365-day-a-year conversation. The Vikings, the Bears, the Packers, the Lions. The Lions dominated this division for 2 consecutive years. And, guys, just looking back at last year and just how weird some of these things went down. The fact that the Vikings beat the Lions in both games. The Lions beat the Bears in both games. The NFC North was a bit of a crazy mess last year. Dave, your outlook now with the offseason so far, where have the Lions put themselves now in the ranking and pecking order?
And the Vikings beat him with Max Brosmer.
We don't talk about the Christmas game, Dave.
That's right, Rod's
Who was like historically.
It was like his 4th career start. Look, I mean, I think, all 4 of these teams, the reality is they have a chance to win the division, okay? This is one of the best divisions in football, 4 of the best coaches in football, in my opinion. Certainly there's some young quarterbacks who are ascending players, Jordan Love, Caleb Williams, who may make life tough on the Lions going forward if they reach their potential. The Lions will be in that mix, though. I know some people are down on them. Many people are down on them after the season that they had. But the Lions, the top-line talent on the Lions roster is still as good as anyone's in the NFL. Penei Sewell and Jahmyr Gibbs and Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jack Campbell, all these people that Rod Wood talked about earlier having to extend and the players that they've given contracts to already. They can compete with any team in the NFL. It's a matter of staying healthy. It's a matter of how some of the depth pieces they added this offseason fit into that roster and what they can provide on the field once they get there. But it's a toss-up of a division. I would expect it to be a dogfight until Week 18 again.
Nick, if we went to the different fan bases and asked them how they felt about their offseason, I think there might be a little bit of panic like there is in this town. I mean, there was a lot of attrition in Chicago on the back end of that defense. Green Bay is still dealing with Micah Parsons and his injury and how they're going to bounce back from that. And Minnesota's trying to figure out a lot on what they're supposed to do without their GM, with what they do at the quarterback position. Is that something to take account for?
100%. The Lions went through a transitional phase last year. That's what that was. They had some older guys. We talked about Raymond, David Montgomery, Alex Anzalone. Those were like the buddies of some of your younger players that are now, it's their time now. So they went through a transition last year. They shouldn't have missed the playoffs, but they did. And then you look at the rest of the division, the Bears attacked and the Bears are going to be good. I'm not going to say that they're not, but they attacked a last-place schedule. They will now have to play a first-place schedule, and life with that is brutal, as the Lions just saw. And I think the Lions and Packers are like kind of right there, and I would almost say the Lions might be a notch ahead of them. So I think they're right back where they should be. I think they've addressed what they needed to address this offseason. I would have had concerns if Dan said, I'm not changing anything with the staff. We're not doing any of that. You guys could shut up. Like, I would have had concerns with that, but he didn't. They've addressed everything, and they've changed the things that needed to be changed. So to me, they've kept pressure on the other teams to continue. And if I were the other teams, I'd be like, yeah, they're not going anywhere. That's what their reaction probably would be about the Lions, is they're not going away.
Will?
I tread carefully here, but I do think the Bears are a pretty extreme regression candidate for the reasons that Nick listed and Dave listed, but also the fact that the way they won a lot of their games last year was pretty unsustainable. Like they had these ridiculous, impossible fourth-quarter comebacks where in some games they had like a win probability of 12%, and they pulled it out of their you-know-what to win, and that's just not a way to make a sustainable living in the NFL. And adding some of the losses, I think they look more like an 8 or 9 win team in 2020 2026. I think the most threatening team this season is the Vikings with Kyler Murray going there. Their undoing last year, obviously, was that J.J. McCarthy just didn't pan out and he was fighting some injuries. But we saw exactly what Kevin O'Connell did with Sam Darnold in 2024 when he completely revitalized his career, and Sam Darnold is now a Super Bowl champion. And he's got a chance to do something similar with still one of the most dynamic athletic quarterbacks in the NFL in Kyler Murray. And, they just need a quarterback to maximize those receivers, Jefferson, Addison, and they've still got a pretty good offensive line based on last year's additions. I think the Vikings could pose a serious problem in the division this year.
I think the Vikings, Kevin O'Connell's a wonderful coach. He's really good. I'm not a Kyler Murray guy, so I still worry about, kind of what they have and don't have at quarterback. I agree that Chicago is a candidate for regression, but Caleb Williams could be a star. Yeah. If he takes a step forward, the Iceman, right? If he takes a step forward with Ben Johnson, he could be trouble for years to come for the Lions. So that's the one wild card there. He's really, really good.
All right, we do have one final poll for all of you to get involved in. So if you want to jump in, we're going to look at the predictions for the NFC North. Listening to everything these guys said, I think we'll get the slide there, unless I'm rushing this. There we go. Look at that. What a team. Wow.
First one in. First vote.
Fire up. Where's Rod?
Rod Wood didn't leave. Yeah, he's in the parking lot.
Rod's outside in his car doing this.
Rod's like, wait. I'm not going to retire. I don't want to miss the parade. I'm sure he'll find his way onto a float.
Said he's getting a ring. He said he already asked Dan for a ring if they win one.
Yeah, read Dave's question and answer with Rod. It'll take you 3 days to finish the whole thing, but that was great access. Super Bowl champ, make the playoffs, NFC champ, or no playoffs. We'll see if Ben Johnson's in the room voting, snickering as
Trying
well.
to get the no playoffs up from the bottom.
As this happens live in front of us, I don't even want to. I don't know if I want to dive into this, but 9-8. Rod just said it. We're not happy with it. We know everything that Nick has been touching on, especially here, just the things that they are fixing from small to big. And as we wrap up our discussion here, the last few minutes, and send the high school kids back to Taco Bell before they go to school, just to last us a little bit longer. The draft could really sway, I think, this pool coming up here, or this poll, excuse me. If they get the offensive tackle and they say that we see this guy through Camp Will as a potential, if he can earn that starting spot, then yeah, we found our next 10-year tackle. I think it could sway it. How much do you think the draft impacts this poll?
It's a huge part of their offseason plan. They could come out of the first 2 rounds of the draft with an offensive tackle they love and potentially an edge rusher they love in round 2. And if they do that, I feel like this poll looks a lot different. But they will take the best player available to them, and that has served them well. I mean, consider all the criticism they faced in 2023. Well, that draft class looks pretty darn good 3 years later.
Here's the thing, that what they do in the draft could and would sway this poll, but it shouldn't, because those guys are rookies, and even if they're counted on to play a role next year, they are not going to be the most important players on the field. Yes, they could use an upgrade at right tackle. Certainly they could use an upgrade at defensive end. They're going to need some extra help in the secondary given the injuries they have and the off-field concerns there. But remember, those guys are rookies, and to count on a rookie in a weak draft that you take at 17 or that you take at 50 to be a primetime player that puts you over the top to win a Super Bowl, I think that's unrealistic.
Nick, you watch and prepare for the draft. It is your year-round profession. Are there impact players enough to make this poll sway in the favor of not just make the playoffs, but get all the way to that ascension point?
Yes, absolutely. And I would expound on Dave's point that you shouldn't be in a situation where you're waiting on rookies to come in and put you over the top, and I don't think they are. I think the Lions, people have panicked I understand it because you've watched the Lions for 50 years, and I get it. But I think if you look at objectively, if you look at the rest of the NFL, they are exactly where they need to be. They have a ton of young talent on that team that is going to be re-signed. They have a quarterback who is still in the prime of his career. At least maybe he's on, starting the whatever, but it's at the beginning of it. And so I think that they still have a window for the next 3 years here to make a run at the Super Bowl. I think they are a contender, and I think that whatever they do in the draft, they position themselves as good as anybody. Look, last year they went 9-8. They were 5 plays away from 12 wins. And I know that's not the NFL, but if they had gotten into the playoffs, and had gotten some confidence, they could have made a run, and it would not have shocked anybody. They are pretty close.
Were there ways for them to wiggle in some big names this offseason? Sure, we just discussed possibilities. But I think Rod's point, as hard as it is for people to hear it, Brad makes the same point, Dan makes the same point. They have 6 or 7 guys at their position.
There are so many teams that would trade their situation for Detroit.
That are top 3, top 5 guys at their spots that core right now is without a doubt one of the best in the NFL. Am I wrong, Dave? You're making a big deep breath.
I mean, again, I feel like I'm the negative one up here, but no, you're right.
You did tell the high school kids to be a jerk every once in a while.
I did. You're right. Yeah, I did. No, I think you're right that look, the Lions could have spent more. Okay, it's a cap issue, it's a cash issue. You can do whatever you want though in the offseason, and they're running their business the right way. They're doing the right thing, and I don't have any problems. I think free agency is a lot of fool's gold, but also you can go all in and you can spend a little bit more and get that defensive end or get that, better offensive tackle or better cornerback, whatever, name the position. So they could have done more. And I think that's where fans have an issue with sometimes is they see it, they see how close they are, and they want them to do that little bit more. And the Lions they're following the plan that they have always had, and they will continue to follow that plan. And there's certainly something to be said about that. But when you're that close, it just hurts when you don't go that extra.
And you see the Rams do it a few years ago. The Eagles do it a couple seasons ago.
And maybe they will get to a point where that becomes a thing. Yeah. When Jared becomes like a 34-year-old, maybe that's when that happens. But I think that they believe they're not ready for that yet.
Agree. You're 100% right.
I think that they might someday.
I do want to challenge Dave's premise that they aren't a couple rookies away from potentially getting over the top. I think based on some of the needs they have, they could be. Like, let's say they take Vanga Ioane in the first round, and all of a sudden they've got an interior offensive line between Ratledge, Mays, Ione, and then Sewell at likely left tackle that is as good as maybe anyone's in the NFL. And let's say they add in the second round maybe like just a pure pass rusher in the form of like R. Mason Thomas, and maybe he is the piece that completes what DJ Wanham is as a run defender. Like, if you plugged those two specific pieces into this team and fill two pretty glaring holes, I think you could elevate your stature from a team that could win the NFC North to a team that could seriously threaten to make the Super Bowl. It does depend a lot to me on who they come out of the draft with and what those guys could mean to this year's team.
Our friends from the Detroit Sports Commission are here. Let's hope for 3 playoff games here at home, or maybe 2, right? The second round and then the championship. Does that sound fun? That's great. Because Ford Field is a rocking environment, and fans in this town deserve to have home playoff games again. Maria, how do you do? Okay. She went like this.
Everybody else?
That's true love right there. Thank you, everybody. To Nick, thank you very much. Dave, thank you. Will, thank you so much. And thanks for your attention. And
appreciate it, everyone.
Hanging out with us today.
Guys, this was an absolute blast. So fun to listen to. We're going to be watching you and your predictions and on draft day. And if it's anything like your predictions last year, you all failed miserably.
Not even close.
He's hard to predict.
You guys are amazing. One last round of applause for these guys. Thank you. Terry Radigan, thanks for your important role. I hope you had fun today. You're always so great at what you do. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, tell your friends and colleagues to join the DEC. We're a fun group of people. On time, every time. This meeting of the DEC is now adjourned. Go Lions!